Hello and welcome to Business Africa with me, Ronald Kato. This week, out goes the politics and in comes the economy. Faced with slow growth, an oil sector in recession and rising debt, where does Nigeria's new government even start? We shine a spotlight on the tough decisions awaiting Nigeria's new president. Plus, Zambia, Ethiopia and Ghana's agonizing wait for debt relief continues after a meeting by G20 finance ministers failed to make headway. It adds to the anxiety that debt restructuring has been hijacked by great power politics. Also, it is all systems go for the East African oil pipeline. Tanzania's approval of the project means Uganda has overcome its last impediment to becoming an oil producer. Stay with us for the details. Thank you for joining us. Now, even before taking off, Nigeria's new president faces a long to-do list. From returning a sluggish economy to growth to containing rising debt, the country's incoming government has its plate full. There's also the mess created by a botched introduction of new bank notes. The next 4 years are being seen as the last chance to pull Africa's largest economy out of the pits.
Nigeria's election has delivered upset and orthodoxies alike. Upset by their own economy, underperforming for the last 10 years, Nigerians approach through the prism of high food prices, jobs and government corruption. More than anything, a thirst for better days. Yet, Africa's largest economy is still beset by slow growth. The oil sector, the country's chief forex earner, has been in recession since 2020. On a quarterly basis, the sector has recorded negative growth 11 consecutive times since the second quarter of 2020. Over the last 7 years, GDP growth has averaged 1.1% as the country experienced 2 economic recessions, pushing 133 million people into poverty. But all is not lost. The recent commissioned Lekki port is a big infrastructure win. It is a huge boost for Nigeria's export competitiveness. The incoming administration has one job, going by the vote outcome, to implement policies that will deliver an inclusive and competitive economy.
Gospel Obele is the chief economist at Streetnomics Global. Thank you so much, sir, for your time. To what extent did the state of the economy influence the behavior of the voters?
Thank you so much, Ronald, for having me. It's been a roller coaster of incoherent policies, from the pandemic, and that has led to a severe cost of living crisis. Severe, huge cost of doing business as well. A lot of Nigerians are trapped, in newer levels of poverty cycles, than they used to be. Inflation has hit an all-time 21% high, and these are big concerns. And more recently, policies by the central bank have sort of constrained the economy in terms of liquidity options and avenues to flourish and prosper in that context. So all of these events sort of intensify the need for change, the need for an outcry, the need for a new leader, the need for a fresh level of direction, by young people particularly. And we've seen all of that translated into high vote turnout in the last weekend and even in the next 2 Saturdays at the gubernatorial. So it was largely expected, yes.
Gospel, this low growth, an oil sector in recession, rising debt, where does the new administration even begin?
Yes, I agree with you that there are so many moving parts, as to what's happening right now in the Nigerian economy. The new president has an array of activities or priorities that he rather needs to fix, and that would hinge largely on prioritizing, and in many cases also looking out for variables that are interdependent, in the delivery of new economic propositions to the Nigerian people. So technically, it's a case of juggling more than one balls into the air and ensuring that you have the right economic management teams to begin to rework, our process back to prosperity, back to stability, back to fair prices within the system, and also fixing the structural deficits that have, led to this damage that we're in today.
Gospel, the outgoing regime has had to govern through 2 recessions, a fall in oil prices, and a pandemic. Is there anything that President Buhari could have done different but didn't do?
Nigerians voted him in 2015 on the grounds of change, and also based on some perceived track record he had around being able to being decisive on issues. But we haven't seen that in the last 8 years. And we've also seen that the direction in which he had led the economy has been more oil sector focused, and in many cases, we've also seen where the non-oil sector has raked in more than 1.1 trillion, in revenue compared to the oil and gas sector in the past quarter. All right. So we've seen that the potential, exists, but the current administration, as soon about to leave, lacked the political will and the right political structure to sort of, close institutional gaps and deliver on policy or campaign promises, which again, on the flip side, led to that inability to properly manage, the economy in the context of the global issues that happened due to the pandemic and all of that. And as a result, we're where we are today.
Do you think the candidates have, articulated properly the issues underpinning the economic malaise that, bedevils Nigeria? And do you think they have a good grasp of the solutions needed to remedy that?
They are all nuanced in the quality of solutions they seek to bring to the table. They are also well nuanced in the mechanisms around which they plan to deliver that policy or campaign promises, and that is actually what also sets the difference, amongst the top 3 to 4 forerunners, as the case may be. And also the desire and quest by the young Nigerian or middle class for a fresh leadership outlook, who would think about the challenges differently, who's probably more decisive on the system, who probably has no affiliation, to the current state of things, as the case may be. So there are a lot of expectations in the air, and we're trusting that the election results and post-elections engagement would help to enable and reinforce that. But what I see to a very large extent is that the mechanisms to deliver the policy options differ across the 4 runners. And we hope that whoever steps into power would have to probably upgrade in terms of ability to execute the right mechanisms in place, to ensure that we are delivering the required change, growth, and prosperity options that are most important for the average Nigerian right now.
Gospel Obele, nice to have you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ronald, for having me today. Really great speaking with you.
A meeting of G20 finance ministers in India last week failed to agree a debt relief deal for low-income countries, prolonging the anxiety in Zambia, Ghana, and Ethiopia. The talks are deadlocked over China's demand that multilateral development banks and private creditors too accept losses.
The so-called Sovereign Debt Roundtable had been touted as the best chance to achieve convergence amongst lenders to agree to a debt deal for Zambia, but also to unlock prospects for debt relief for Ethiopia and Ghana. The meeting was called to discuss the shortcomings of the Common Framework, a G20 initiative that brings together Paris Club lenders, private creditors and China to reduce the debt burden facing low-income countries. At the centre of the impasse is Beijing's insistence that the loans disbursed by the World Bank and other multilateral lenders be included in any restructuring. The lenders, backed by the US, have rejected the demand, saying any haircuts on loans would hurt their financial standing. China says it has made generous concessions and has accused the US of seeking to politicize debt relief without offering solutions. The meeting had been followed with interest in Lusaka, Accra and Ethiopia, where governments were hoping for a resolution to their debt restructuring appeals.
In a major setback for climate campaigners, Tanzania has approved the construction of a pipeline for Uganda's oil. It is an important win for Kampala's ambitions to join the Oil Producers Club in 2025.
Dar es Salaam's approval means that the pipeline's construction can finally start. Uganda had been the first to give permission in January. Estimated to cost $5 billion, the facility, touted as the world's longest heated pipeline, will transport crude from oil fields in mid-western Uganda to the Tanzanian port of Tanga for export.
The pipeline is 20% in Uganda and 80% in Tanzania. So as a single integrated project, the completion of the 2 licenses signifies that everything from legal to environmental and any other aspects of the project have been aligned, and therefore construction can begin.
However, the project has been the target of climate activists and human rights campaigners who say the pipeline will be bad for biodiversity. In a major boost to the project, a French court on Tuesday threw out a case filed by environmental groups against Total. In January, the country began drilling oil at a site operated by China National Offshore Oil Company, CNOOC. France's Total Energy is the pipeline's biggest shareholder with 62% stake. Uganda and Tanzania both hold 15% each.
And that wraps up this episode of Business Africa. I am Ronald Kato. The news continues on air and online. Bye for now, and I'll see you on the next episode of Business Africa.